Right. I don't think you could be called woke if you don't support abortion and so-called trans rights, right?
According to the documents, he knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services, including arthroscopic surgeries.
And it's a very serious crime. In fact, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, RICO case in New York's history.
This is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York. You guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia.
Exactly, because if she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Sunny Hostin just sparked a firestorm on The View. And this time, it's not just social media reacting. The show's producers actually cut the live feed. Let that sink in for a second. That never happens. People are still trying to piece together exactly what went down. But from what's being said, it all started when Sunny made some bold statements about race and privilege. And when I say bold, I mean so bold that ABC decided they had to shut it down mid-broadcast. That's almost unheard of for a show built on debate and controversy. Now, here's where things get messy. The network hasn't released an official transcript of what was said, but insiders claim Sunny was making some very pointed remarks about systemic privilege, particularly how white men allegedly benefit the most. And that sent shockwaves everywhere. But here's the thing. Was this really so extreme that it had to be censored? Or was it just a case of uncomfortable truths hitting too close to home? The reaction behind the scenes suggests that even The View's own team wasn't on the same page about how to handle it. And let me just tell you, this is far from over. Because what happened after the cameras cut, that's where things really start to heat up. The internet wasted zero time reacting to this. The second that live feed cut.
Having some more conservative voices on your network, actually not making them pariahs, not directing your audience to feel that everything that Donald Trump does.
Panel. She is self-appointed. She knows everything. It's great to see her ego take this hit, but I think it will be short-lived.
It's amazing to listen to her talk about.
Social media exploded, and the reactions completely divided. On one side, people were furious, calling for Sunny Hostin to be fired immediately. #cancel The View shot up the trending list, with users demanding consequences, saying she crossed a line that even The View couldn't tolerate. Some were even questioning.
Anna went in a different direction, but I love the fact that, Manny is younger and he's
How much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he? Like a month or a year or 10 years?
No, 5 years. It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me.
Why she still had a seat at the table after a moment like that. But then, there was the other side, just as loud, just as passionate. To them, this wasn't about controversy. It was about censorship. They're saying Sunny was just speaking truth to power, calling out uncomfortable realities. And ABC's decision to cut the live feed only proved how afraid the media is of real conversations about race and privilege. And let's be real.
I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He throws the garbage out. He does the heavy stuff.
When something like this happens, the reaction outside the show is one thing. But what about inside? Because word is, some of Sunny's own colleagues weren't exactly thrilled with how this all went down. And that's where things get really interesting. Behind the scenes, absolute chaos. ABC executives wasted no time scrambling into emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to contain the fallout. Damage control was priority number one.
So we know Sunny Hostin and her husband, Dr. Emmanuel Hostin, are preparing for a legal battle to fight accusations that he committed federal insurance fraud.
But the big question was how. They had options, but none of them were easy. Do they apologize and try to smooth things over? Do they suspend Sunny to show they're taking action? Or do they go for the nuclear option, removing her from The View entirely? And it wasn't just the execs feeling the heat. The producers were caught in the middle, trying to navigate a situation that had never happened before. Cutting the live feed was already a drastic move, one they couldn't take back. Now, they had to decide if that was enough or if more needed to be done. But here's where it gets even more complicated, because the cast completely split. Some co-hosts, according to sources, were pushing hard for Sunny to go. They saw this as a step too far, something that could damage the show beyond repair. Others, though, weren't backing down. They stood by her.
Sunny Hostin of The View, who's constantly raging about race and reparations and how bad America is and its racial past and all this stuff.
Arguing that she was just saying what needed to be said. And if anything, ABC was the one making this worse by shutting her down. The tension, unreal. And the way things were going, there was no telling which side would win. But there was one thing nobody could ignore. ABC had to make a decision, and fast. Because if they didn't, the public would make it for them. And just like that, The View started feeling the consequences. Ratings? Down. Some longtime viewers made it very clear they were done with the show, saying this was the last straw. Whether they were upset about what Sunny said or furious that ABC shut her down, one thing was obvious. The audience was shrinking fast. But the real nightmare? The advertisers. Brands started pulling out.
We know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
Not wanting their names anywhere near this mess. And if you know anything about network television, you know that's a death sentence. The moment advertisers get nervous, execs start making moves, big ones. Now, ABC was looking at more than just one controversy. They were looking at a full-blown crisis. And behind closed doors, sources say they weren't just talking about Sunny anymore. They were talking about a major shakeup. One that could involve firing multiple co-hosts or even rebranding the entire show to move past the scandal. Because here's the thing, ABC knows controversy drives ratings, but this was something else. This wasn't just debate. This was dividing the audience, scaring off sponsors, and putting the entire brand at risk. And when that happens, nobody's job is safe. The only question now, who would be the first to go?
I think he's doing something a little bit more diabolical, if I'm being honest. Representative Andy Ogles, a Republican of Tennessee, on January 23rd, just 3 days after Trump was inaugurated, already proposed amending the 22nd Amendment to allow Trump to serve a third term.
And just when things couldn't get any messier, they did. Because while everyone was focused on the View controversy, something else was brewing in the background. Something big. Sunny Hostin's husband, Dr. Emmanuel Hostin, was already tangled up in a massive federal insurance fraud lawsuit. We're talking multi-million-dollar allegations, fraudulent medical services, unnecessary surgeries, and a whole lot of legal trouble. Now, this wasn't exactly new news. This case had been bubbling under the surface for a while. But the timing? That's what had people talking. Some critics started pointing fingers, saying maybe, just maybe, Sunny's explosive comments on The View weren't just about race and privilege.
And I've been criticizing them for 8 years for doing it, pointing out that it's not the job of the media to take sides.
Maybe they were about something else entirely. A distraction, a way to shift the narrative away from what was happening in her own home. And honestly, the timing is interesting. Right as this lawsuit starts making waves, suddenly, she's at the center of one of the biggest scandals in The View's history. Could be coincidence. Could be something more. Either way, the attention was no longer just on her words. It was on everything connected to her. And with ABC already scrambling over the fallout from her on-air comments, the last thing they needed was a co-host with a personal scandal dragging them down even further. Which left one very big question. How much more would they be willing to take before making a final call on Sunny's future? Because at this point, it wasn't just about what she said. It was about everything she represented. This wasn't just about Sunny anymore. This was about everything. Because once the dust started to settle, the bigger conversation became impossible to ignore. Was this about free speech? Was it about accountability? Or was it about something deeper?
Which, by the way, how annoying is The View getting? God, they're insufferable, that lot, aren't they? It's just a side effect.
Who gets to say what on national television? And who decides when a line has been crossed? People were split. Some saw this as yet another example of the media silencing difficult conversations. Proof that even a show like The View, built on debate, had limits when it came to talking about race and privilege. Others said no, this wasn't about censorship. It was about responsibility. When you have a platform that big, there's a level of accountability that comes with it, and when someone pushes too far, there should be consequences. And then, there was the biggest question of all. Can The View even survive in today's culture? Because let's be real, daytime TV isn't what it used to be. Audiences have changed. The internet has changed. Conversations that once felt fresh and bold now feel exhausting to some viewers.
Sunny Hostin, one of the ladies on The View, she just came out. And you got to give her credit for standing against massive unpopularity.
While others say the show hasn't gone far enough. For ABC, that's a dangerous place to be. Because if the audience feels like The View is out of touch, if advertisers start seeing it as too risky, that's when networks start asking the one question no one on the show ever wants to hear. Is it time to cancel? And if things keep going the way they are, that answer might come sooner than anyone expects. So now, the million-dollar question, what happens next? Will ABC actually pull the trigger and fire Sunny Hostin? Will she come out with a carefully worded apology, trying to smooth things over? Or will she double down, stand by what she said, and force the network to make the next move? And what about The View itself? Can the show really recover from something this massive? Or is this the beginning of the end? Because let's be honest, this isn't just another scandal. This is hitting at the core of what The View is supposed to be. And if they can't find a way to bounce back...
She just came out at a time when woke is at its absolute lowest. Nobody wants to claim that mantle anymore. She claimed that mantle. And she said to oppose woke, actually, is ungodly and unchristian.
It might not be a question of firing Sunny. It might be a question of whether the entire show makes out alive. And then there's the wild card, her husband's legal battle. That lawsuit is still hanging over everything. And depending on how it plays out, it could make things even worse for Sunny's career. If things take a turn for the worse in court, ABC might not even need to make a decision. Public pressure could do it for them. Right now, everything is up in the air. No clear answers. No resolution. Just one big mess that's only getting bigger. But what do you think? Should ABC fire Sunny? Should The View change its approach? Or is this all being blown out of proportion? Let's talk about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments.